All right, well, thank you guys for joining us for another Health Truth Life video. Today we're actually covering another one of our matrix concepts. We're back to the matrix, and we are under service this time, and we're going over matrix concept number 17.
17.
Which would be vocation.
Vocation. So yeah, we're starting out service, which is the fifth of the sections of 6 sections within the matrix. And service meaning that which you're doing for others, obviously to take care of yourself and others in your household and your community, as far as like what you do for a living, what you do in society to kind of help out those around you, whether it be in your job itself or in your community or in your place of worship or what have you, or just with others that you come in contact with, just your neighbors. So it encompasses vocation, which is in this definition kind of your job or what you do for a living. Number 2 being outward focused as opposed to being inward focused, so we're going to discuss that concept as well. Number 3 within there, discipling, which means to kind of teach others. So you learn something, then you teach someone else how to do something. And of course, discipling has a spiritual connotation, but also just in general has a connotation with just respect to a skill or something. You can then teach someone else that skill or help tutor and or disciple them. And then of course volunteering, which is using your gifts, your strengths, those things that you're gifted in to kind of help the others that are in need. So today we'll be discussing vocation, which again is what you do for a living and how it does play into your overall state of health or dis-ease, as we've kind of talked about before, that state of dis-ease, not being at ease. And many people are in jobs that don't have a state of ease for them.
I mean,
so
this is something obviously we all do. We all have a job. We all have a profession or a trade or something that we are doing, and we typically look at this as the means to provide. But our goal here is to kind of open our eyes to see that it's so much more than that. And I love how, as you went through these, going over service, it just man, as we look at these things and apply these to our lives, it does fill you more with a sense of purpose and value and truly how we perceive what we do each day. It gives us more purpose and meaning and value. So that's the goal here. So we're going to go over vocation. I love this quote you have by Robert McCracken. He was a New York City minister back in the early 1900s. Actually, I guess he was born in 1904 and then died in 1973. That's what you have here. So he said, "A man can be as truly a saint in a factory as in a monastery, and there is as much need of him in the one as in the other." So it's good. A lot of times we look up to pastors or people in ministry and think, man, these people are living life the way they should and serving and like really living a more full life. And then we think, especially in our society, we tend to judge people who have lower jobs, what we would consider lower jobs, and say that they're not as valuable or living as valued of a life.
What would society look like if everyone was in ministry? I mean, what would society look like if everyone was in construction? What would society look like if everyone was in law or medicine or engineering? You'd have a pretty myopic world without many skills being taken care of,
Society wouldn't function, it wouldn't flourish.
Absolutely.
We have to have everybody for different tasks and different responsibilities at different levels.
Sure. Couldn't even have this building, you couldn't have the clothes on your back. And so there's lots of things out there that certainly, man, you kind of got to think, okay, well, there's a give and take and there's a need for your gifts and your passions where you're at oftentimes, and trying to find that connection and see where you're dialed in a sense to where your gifts and passions are to lead you into your vocation is the ideal circumstance, would be my opinion. So
I'm just going to read the first little couple sentences you have here. But every job is essential. Let us not believe anything other than this premise. From the street sweeper to the city mayor, each job has value and provides for the needs of those in the community. And so I love that as we take the time to see our jobs as service into the community, like serving the community, then it does give you more value, more of a sense of, man, I'm contributing to the flourishing of society. It's not just I'm going in to collect money,
Right.
to make a paycheck, which is necessary. But yet, once you realize what you're doing is making society a better place to live and to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, as believers, we know we're doing it in service unto God.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives us the drive and the desire to wake up each day. And if you're a street sweeper, if you're a janitor, or if you're a physician, a lawyer, whatever it might be, do it to the glory of God and do it in service to others and then to Him ultimately.
Absolutely. So it changes your perspective, right? Because it does show that, hey, regardless of how mundane you think your job is, you have an ability to impact people that I don't, that you don't, that many others don't. And you're in a unique situation where you can impact those around you in ways that you never could without conceiving that, that spiritual component of that part that, hey, I got a role to play here, that's bigger than just this feeling of a mundane type job, so.
It's neat too. I remember used to work at Sacred Heart, for years and years and years, big health ministry. And man, some of the happiest, most fulfilling people I would meet and talk to throughout my day would be those in housekeeping, and then those that were working in the food industry, in the cafeteria.
Right.
I love that. Like, I loved having just simple day-to-day interactions with them. I would leave those interactions feeling more full and alive and smiling, and those people just, everybody taking the time, like they saw that as an act of service, and they served me well. They did a good job.
Do you know, I heard a secret about the cafeteria there at Sacred Heart. It's kind of interesting. I didn't know this, but I walked by one time before lunch and heard them singing and dancing in there. They turned on music 15 minutes before they got out to serve the public and or the staff, and they would play uplifting music, usually gospel and or something else. It just got them going and got them in a positive framework.
So cool.
Changes their neurochemistry, the music they're listening to, the worshiping that they're doing, changes them from a heart of thinking about themselves to thinking about others. And it's just kind of neat to see that just shows how, hey, music and celebration and worship play a role in our overall ability to serve others, even within our place of employment. So
it's so interesting because it's all the perception thing. Like, those people, like you said, that act of worship and listening to that music got them in the right mindset. They're not thinking about their job, like how much money they're making and what their paycheck and all that. In that moment, they're just thinking about, how can I make the most of this time and serve these people well? And so I experienced that a lot there, and it was such a blessing. So,
it was
such a neat thing.
Definitely.
So additionally, every job and or vocation has the potential to manifest spiritual fruit once we recognize that the spiritual life does not necessitate a religious job. You want to dive into that a little bit?
Kind of just going back to that same point. I mean, you have a lot of people who they worship those in ministry, like say, hey, look at what you're doing. It's such an amazing thing. And again, not to put down what those in ministry are doing, because the load that they carry is incredible. But the point is that recognize that, hey, they've got a load to carry that you can't likely fathom, right? But so do many other people as well. And both can play a role in the spiritual kind of nurturing of those that they come in contact with. And so I think it's just a recognition that, hey, a respect of those that are doing this, but also a respect of the fact that we've got an opportunity, just as people not in an ecclesiastical type role, to go out there and be light in the world, because that's what our role is as Christ followers, Sure. So I guess that's just my point on that, is I think there's a great need for those in ministry, but I know a lot of people who are kind of either kind of babes in the faith. They look at people, at pastors and those in ministry and kind of revere them, when of course their reverence should be kind of guided towards God, and then that kind of puts things all into a perfect, more of a perspective with respect to that.
And I agree. A lot of times people in the church probably think the pastor is, they put him on a pedestal, and they think, I wish I, had as much faith as him, or I wish I, could pray as much as him, or any of those things. But, they're human just like you and I, and you can serve just like they can, or they are in their congregation. You can do that in your job. And what I like too, you go on to explain this and talk about it. You say, additionally, one must recognize the degree of sacrifice necessary for the man called to be spiritually minded within a secular profession, where much that is holy and divine are frowned upon, encouraged against, or downright reprimanded. So in a sense, it's more challenging, you know, in our public day-to-day settings to represent Christ and to share the truth and to be that light, you know. So in a sense, you know, we've got more of a challenge than the pastor. The pastor is expected of them within the you know, the church and all that.
Yeah, and again, it's not a competition. It's just basically a recognition of the roles that each play, and both are necessary.
Yeah,
and that's kind of just the point of it all. And so,
going down here now, you go into the special forces. You know,
I think it's a great analogy,
really
right?
Is.
So obviously the special operations community, we have a bunch of them in our local area where we live here in Florida. But I think of, hey, gosh, they go behind the scenes to different parts of the world, different theaters, to enact things that need to be done in order to potentially maintain peace, control, stability, and security. Kind of similarly, I believe those in a secular profession, particularly in places where there may be persecution against Christians, wherever that is, because there's a component of that here in the States, that you're kind of a special operator in those areas, or can be. If you're in a secular environment, you're able to share light in a place that is under darkness. And so I think it's a responsibility of believers to kind of consider that whatever role you've been kind of put into, man, there's a likelihood that you've got the ability to, again, impact others and almost be kind of undercover, you know? So that's kind of my point behind that.
You say that. In a similar vein, I see many Christ followers who utilize their gifts in secular vocations as special operation agents for truth, goodness, and hope. Their chosen work does not focus primarily on matters of faith or spirituality. However, the impact they can have is a ministerial type relationship with their coworkers, clients, or patients. It cannot be understated. So, man, just be reminded and be encouraged of that truth, that wherever you are, whatever your job is day to day, you have an opportunity to impact those people around you for truth, for God, for His purposes. So for bigger than just, you're not just there to make a paycheck. Like, I'll never forget, because I struggled for a while, you know, for years, with work, with vocation. Like, what do you want me to do, God? Like, what work should I do to provide, for my family? And then so I got jobs, I worked my way up, you know, I provided, God did what He always does, and He makes a way and things happen. But then too, I remember listening to a sermon where they talked specifically about this, and where it was like, we've got to stop looking at our jobs as just for the means of providing. It's your service to God, it's your service to the community. So once your mind changes and switches to that, then yes, you're filled with more purpose and passion. Like, you want to do your job well, and you want to make that effort to see those other people around you, how you can serve them, and how you can make their life better, and be more encouraging. And so that's such a big part. I think a lot of people struggle because we're pushed to think that our job is who we are, like our identity. It's our identity, you know, what you do. It's one of the first things we say, like, oh, I'm Jason, nice to meet you. What do you do? You know, it's that first thing we go to. But ultimately knowing we are made in the image of God, created by Him and for Him, to serve Him and to serve others by what we do. And so that, it carries over into our jobs, our vocations.
Right,
you know?
right, absolutely.
So down here, towards the bottom, you have Proverbs 13:12. It states, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life." So many individuals work decades in a career which leads to a sick heart because they are compelled to continue working in an unfulfilling job out of guilt, a sense of duty, or out of sheer necessity.
And again, it's not the shortchange, and hey, we have necessities, right? So if you're in a job to support your family and you're necessary to keep your family afloat, I think you probably need to keep doing that job.
Right.
Whatever you can do to kind of put food on the table for that month or that year. But also there's a component of trusting God with your gifts and your passions, and then also trying to find out where you can utilize what you're uniquely gifted in to then give that to the world. And it doesn't mean you have to do it in your vocation or in your job.
True.
You certainly can be doing it as you do it, coaching your kids' sports teams, and also in your places of worship, your church, and with your, the people that you worship with. So those are places where you can use your gifts and passions in other ways. Yeah. But I think that my point with this is that I believe that a lot of people are in jobs that are deferring hope, and they're in just this drudgery of their job that's not aligned with their gifts, passions, or even their worldview, or is even disaligned with their values. And that, I believe, can lead to a state of dis-ease, which actually can increase blood pressure and risk of stress-related illnesses and all these things. So that's my point for putting it in there, is to recognize our job and what we do and put so much time into has effects in so many ways on our health. So
What would you say to those people that kind of feel like they're in that position? I remember having a conversation with someone years ago at work, and he felt this. He felt trapped. He's like, I don't love what I do. I've got to pay my bills, and I feel like this is the only thing I can do.
Wow.
I mean, what would you say?
I think the first thing is to probably shrink as much as you can your debt and what you're spending, whatever's going out, because in that way it takes a little bit of the pressure off and goes, okay, let's relax here. Let's make sure I still have income coming in and be obviously sticking to that. But then, look at others and ask others that are, I think, peers and or mentors of you that may know your gifts and strengths and know your history better than you do, and ask for, counsel. And that may be someone in ministry, that may be someone who is a friend of yours. A counselor certainly can be utilized for something like this. But I think friends too, because they know you sometimes better than you know yourself.
Good point.
So
I feel like communicate. You're right. If you ask friends or close relatives, these questions, and find the different skills and gifts and talents you have, there could be other things you could be doing. So don't feel stuck or trapped. Like this gentleman I was talking to. And I tried to encourage him in that too, that there is hope and there is, other options out there, especially nowadays. There's so many different things we could be doing,
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of going back to what we talked about in calling, I recommend for younger people to actually shadow and or volunteer and or watch what others do that you're thinking about doing. So if you're thinking about becoming a pilot, go fly and see if you really want to be in a cockpit.
Right.
If you want to think about being a doctor, go follow a doctor and ask them questions. If you're thinking about going and doing business or anything like that, shadow those people and knock on doors and be expectant and see what happens. And so I'd say get as much exposure as you can before you make that decision and start closing doors.
Right. Yeah, no, good advice. Yeah. You're good about that too. We've had several younger people come in the office to kind of shadow and just pick your brain and see if they're truly are interested in medicine. I think it's an encouraging thing to see. To kind of close up here, this is something, like I talked about, for me personally, I did kind of struggle with, the whole work thing, and because it was pushed on kind of, like it's your identity, it's who you are. So I battled that for a while, and then coming around to realize, man, God designed work for us to be a fulfilling thing, and then to be a blessing to others, for us to serve Him ultimately, then to serve our community. And then I love this line. I heard it this morning in the sermon I was listening to. It said, your work will make no sense to you unless you see it as part of a bigger story. And I love that, because that's what clicked for me when I realized, man, what I'm doing day to day for my work, it's designed, it's for God, and it's by God, and it's for His purposes, and it's to serve and to provide, to make life flourish. God's all about making life flourish for us and for His creation. And so we're here to help sustain that and help promote that and be His hands and feet on the earth. So that's what I'm doing day to day. And then, paychecks come and everything's provided, and then I have this fulfilling purpose. It's life-changing,
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for listening. We appreciate y'all listening in on this discussion on your vocation, meaning your job. Put down below if you'd like to discuss about how you see your job play a role in your own health. And of course, we appreciate y'all as always. Thank you very much. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. God bless.
Thank you. Take care.